I've been fortunate enough lately to coach some very distinguished candidates applying, for director level roles in various high-performing companies. And one of the challenges that I faced, in these exchanges was that they simply felt no pain whenever I throw a normal behavioral question at them. So it was always a challenge for me to find the right type of questions for such senior level roles. And after some trial and error, I must say, I found some rather interesting perspectives on how to better frame these behavioral questions in a more executive context. So I thought I share with you 12 examples of such questions today. And basically what I'm going to do next is, to generalize the main behaviors, the main behaviors that are, the main topics that an interviewer will be interested to screen you on during the course of an interview. And the first one is, are you a risk taker? So this, the simpler version of this question could be, tell me about the time when you took a risk in a fast-paced project, right? So, but for such a senior level role, you would expect that person to talk about how they go about risk. And of course, why not to go with some specific examples afterwards. So what I found works best is to talk generally on whether you're a risk taker or not, and then maybe give one or two examples very concisely on times that you've done so, or maybe ask the interviewer for such examples. What I would avoid at all costs is to go on the general side for 10 minutes straight. I think that would be overkill, especially for a tech company. The second one, how do you build relationships? Now, this one will be one that many of you would be familiar with, so I'd rather not insist on this. The third, how do you influence? And this is one probably closely related with the previous one. So probably a simpler version of this would be how a time when you influence the decision with various stakeholders, right? So again, you would want to probably start on a more general note and then go with a specific example. Or if you have something really interesting, really cool that would talk about your ability to influence, sure, why not? And by the way, I also linked, I will also copy paste this list of questions in the comment sections of the video description. Number 4, how do you deal with ambiguity? Ambiguity is a huge topic in these interviews, and it might come in different flavors, such as, for example, how do you deal with an ambiguous situation, such as when you didn't have enough data to consider all the options. So, but if you put it more generally, different people might come with different types of examples. Maybe you're talking about an ambiguous situation from, I don't know, if you're a director of audit, then you're from your auditing experience, or maybe you had to take a decision, that was not directly linked with your auditing work, but rather with your team, but the situation was ambiguous. So whichever you want to choose, but how do you deal with ambiguity is the umbrella of this topic. Number 5, how do you build a great team? So this one is, there's no magic formula for this, but I've seen some very, very interesting approaches here, like, from the leadership style, from keeping people engaged, from listening exercises, very interesting stuff, but I'll let you find your own best approach here. When you did not have time to consider all the options, right? So when you had to take a decision but did not have time to consider all the options. So this might go a little bit with the ambiguity, but still it's a separate one that's often asked, and it's one that I found, it makes a lot of sense to ask also for more senior roles. A time when I had a conflict with someone. So this should go without saying that they would be interesting in your ability to handle conflicts. And again, this is another pretty standard one. What's an example of a tough management situation you've dealt with? So again, what's your management style? This would be probably what's your management style would be the umbrella for this question as well. If one of your team members or your direct reports tell you, I want to take your spot, how do you respond to this? So this is another very interesting one, which I've heard some great and not so great examples. So technical people, especially technical product managers, they don't really like it. And I also had someone from Google that said that, hey Dan, I asked the same question to my manager and he said, after I die. So so it can go both ways. And by the way, jokes could also work in these interviews, especially for these types of roles, at least in my opinion. Why are you potentially interested in Facebook in this example, and what gets you excited? So here you must also connect with the company's mission, values, principles, whatever they're called, but you should really, really take this seriously and think in advance if you could maybe link with some of the core values there or something interesting. So it's worthwhile spending time on these things. What type of environment do you thrive in? So this is a rather ambiguous question, but it was recommended to me from someone applying for a senior product manager at Facebook. So what type of environment do you thrive in? And he actually told me about this question because he said that I thrive in unstructured environments. And the interviewer's response was, okay, but what's the problem with structured environments? So I think it wasn't a great example. But anyway, it's a great question. And finally, the classical one, talk to me about one of your failures, of your significant failures. So the failure, should go without saying, is a very important topic. So there you go. These would be 12 examples of questions that I would recommend for more special types of roles. And I hope you found this useful.